Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on a webinar in web meeting. If you've joined us in the past, thank you. We are usually doing this in webinar, so this is a little different format for us so we can be interactive and exchange some thoughts about a healthy culture. For those of you just joining us, I'm Julie Davis-Colan and this is Lee Colan. We are co-founders of a company called the L Group. And our mission is really to serve as a leadership consulting firm that helps leaders achieve healthy employee and business growth. And today we're going to talk about one element of growth, which is a healthy culture. So thank you for joining us. As I mentioned, we're going to be in web meetings, so we're going to be using some interactive features. At some point, you're going to be in a group of about 8, doing a breakout session for about 8 minutes. So we'll get your thoughts and really appreciate that. In a short while, everyone will be muted. We have a colleague, David Reed, who is in the boardroom on the upper left for most of us. He'll be monitoring the chat and also helping us out. So if you see him in there, he's a part of our team. We appreciate him today. Questions will be fed through the chat function. We'll be watching those. If by some chance we don't get to them, we promise to get back to you individually in 48 hours on that. And let me see, we will also have a copy of the slides and the recording sent to you within 48 hours. So you'll have that if you have to jump off or if you want to refer back to it or what have you. Lee, did I miss anything?
I think we're good. I think we're good.
I
think we're ready to go.
Lee is going to kick us off. Lee is actually my husband, so I know a lot about him, but professionally, he's an organizational psychologist. His background is both in corporate and consulting, and then we have actually been partners in the L Group, which I alluded to before, for 20 years. We're starting our 21st year, correct?
21.
Yeah,
I think
21st year. That's what I said.
It's like trying to remember our anniversary, right?
Yeah, 21st year.
Yeah. I think,
so our 21st year, and I think we've been married for 33 years.
That's right, yeah.
So remember that,
like
all these numbers. So welcome, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I think we have a fair number of people on. There'll be more joining us, but we'll go ahead and get started.
Cool. Thanks, Julie. Appreciate it. Again, welcome, folks. I'm going to want to just set a little context first. I'm going to just screen share for a few slides here just to kind of set a context for our discussion. And then we're going to kind of come back live and just have some conversations. Okay. So first, just wanted to kind of provide this context here. Julie talked about that we're kind of, our firm is really about helping leaders achieve healthy employee and business growth. And this is our model for doing that. So it's a five-phase model, just 5 pieces of the puzzle that fit all together here. And it starts with creating a compelling purpose and a plan, moving on to a healthy culture, which will be our focus today, and then engaging our employees, and then employing positive coaching to make sure we get the best from those employees, and then executing with excellence. So wherever you are in this cycle, we have clients and we've taken them all the way around, but depending on where you are, that's where we help you. But today we wanted to focus on healthy cultures. We know it's always been a challenge. You can go back years and years, and the best leaders always acknowledge the importance of a healthy culture. But particularly now with all the changes that are going on, we're seeing even more leaders saying, you know what, the culture has been our glue. That's what's helped us get through this. And unfortunately, on the other side, we have people like really struggling, going, gee, we don't have that glue now. I need to kind of figure out how to kind of put some of that glue, i.e. culture, in our organization so we can start kind of thriving in a new environment, thriving, not being together and being separate and all of that. So wherever you are on the scale, there's no judgment, but we just wanted to kind of talk a little bit today about what healthy cultures are all about. So if we want to go ahead and use just use the reactions at the bottom of your screen and just give us a quick thumbs up if you feel like you are currently working in a healthy culture. We will not screen capture this or anything like that and send it back to anyone, so don't worry about it. You're bored or anything. So just give us a quick thumbs up at the bottom if you feel like you're working in a healthy culture.
And I love that we're using real thumbs too, not just the reaction.
Oh, okay.
Button.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Give me real. You can give us real. Yeah. Forget about the icons. Just give us real.
Okay, we've got a new one that's this. I guess that's Gonzi Gonsa.
Okay, good deal. Well, it's interesting.
Good.
We host executive lunches a few times a year here in Dallas with CEOs from around town. And we did one on this topic a while back. And several people at the tables, we asked about kind of thinking about a healthy culture you were in and describing it. And several of them were like, can't think of one. And so it was unfortunate, but I'm hoping that even if you're not in one now, to at least draw on that experience is really, really important. So, well, thanks for doing that. So I want to just share real quickly what our kind of perspective is on culture. Listen, it could be a very complex topic. We could fill a wall with a big diagram and stuff on culture and all that. But I love a quote. I'm going to quote Warren Buffett. Hopefully I get it right. He said, there seems to be some perverse human characteristic that likes to make easy things difficult, right? And so I think that's what happens with culture sometimes. Like it is kind of this nebulous thing, right, Julie? But we can also overcomplicate it. And we really like to simplify things and boil them down. And so I'm going to just show you something that here that shows you just how simple-minded we are here. Here's our formula for culture. Culture equals behavior. It's that simple, all right? So again, my background is in organizational psychology. We know that organizations are made of human beings. Human beings are actually quite predictable, and virtually all the time they do what they're reinforced to do. So it's no more complicated than that. So it's really about us designing a culture and being intentional about it to make sure all the systems that we'll talk about in a minute are in place that reinforce the behavior that we want. It's really no more complicated. I'm not trying to be like, snarky about it. It really is that simple. But then it's identifying what those systems are and creating those reinforcements. And every organization has a culture by default, right? We walk into it. Even if you're a new leader walking into a role, you have that team culture, and we'll have clients kind of complain about that. It's like, well, that's the culture that was here. You don't have to accept it, but we want to be intentional about talk about how we can design our culture. And in some cases, you guys have, I know several of you on the call right here have great cultures, but you may want to say, let's make sure we're really kind of solidifying it now, or maybe I just need to tweak something here or there. So we want to make sure as you do that, you're intentional about those actions you take and things that are going to create sustainable behavior change in your organization, because it is simply behavior. That's really the outcome we're looking for. Go ahead, Julie.
And before you leave that, Lee, thinking about that, you're going to go into some systems that need to be in place. But without attention, whatever culture you come into, if you think it's fantastic, it needs intentional work to stay fantastic.
For sure.
Things erode without, even you think of families,
right.
Any kind of small group without intentional efforts, and you're going to delineate what those are, it changes. And if you want it to stay the way it is, and you need to do some direct and distinct efforts.
I mean, we had friends here in the quarantine kind of complain, gosh, it's been so boring and this and that. And by the grace of God, Julie's a great culture builder, not just with her clients and in the business world, but with our family. So we have, we've had theme nights of Shrek theme nights and NASA theme nights and Blue Man Group night and Mamma Mia night. And so just things that kind of reinforce our family culture during that time that made a real difference. Same thing in the work setting. And
yes, Lexi Colan is actually in charge of that.
Our daughters really
Yeah.
spearheaded that, so it's been great. So I alluded to the 12 kind of organizational systems that help kind of craft your culture. So really, if you think about it, your cultures are created and reinforced by these 12 systems right here. Your values, leadership and practices, and decisions, communications, well-being support. In fact, Julie's background for years was in kind of corporate health promotion and total well-being. And now that's even more important. You see that now as organizations being more attuned to the fact that I've got to know the human being behind the employee and what kind of things do I need to do to help him or her maintain balance, be healthy, so that they're at their best to deliver for us. And you can see the remaining systems here. So what I'd like to do is just do a quick poll now, and just ask this question right here. So which of these cultural systems is least aligned with the desired behaviors in your organization? So go ahead and just let us know what you think.
As they're doing that, Lee, when I look at those 12, culture equals behavior, but those require some effort. To align,
it's not
easy.
And that's what we're talking about, designing culture, right? It just doesn't happen. A great late friend of ours, Ron Rossetti, used to say, awesomeness is never accidental, right? So you have a great culture. It's not an accident. There's a lot of intention behind it. The Southwest of the world, airlines get great acclaim for that, but they're not just sitting around. Like every day, every leader's thinking about what they could do to reinforce the culture. So I'll give you just another second here. Okay. And so let me just share the results here. So you guys could see them here. We got leadership practices and decisions are least aligned, and communications. So on down here, we see some of these. So those two really kind of pop out, 21% each of those. No surprise.
Maybe we should talk about two of those at least today.
Really. And so thank you for the perfect lead in there. We are going to go ahead and so let me just talk a little bit about how we need to align these. So there's two types of alignment, right? So we have these 12 systems. We have to vertically align them so that we design these systems to get behaviors that reinforce our business strategy. We don't have culture for culture's sake. We have a culture that's helping us achieve some broader business or even a broader, purpose for the organization that's beyond even business returns, right? It's really about what kind of citizen we're going to be, how we're going to make a positive difference in the world, those types of things. So each of these systems need to be aligned to support behavior that supports your broader purpose, right? That's vertical alignment. Then they also have to be horizontally aligned, which means each of these 12, if you stack them up like this, have to be aligned this way. So for example, you can't have, let me give you a quick example. Yeah. So we have an entrepreneurial company client, and they want to create maintain this entrepreneurial culture as they continue to get bigger. So they put the right selection systems in place to really get people that are very entrepreneurially minded, lots of initiative, lots of great ideas, creative folks, right, Julie? Mm-hmm. And then when they bring them in, they have these goals and measures and reward systems that reward people that are very entrepreneurial, right? That kind of, there's a stake in the game here for you. And that's great. But what happens sometimes is that all these systems are not like, as an organization grows, you develop these systems in different times with different places, maybe different priorities. And so until you step back and look at all of them, you realize, oh, our rules and policies are like from 20 years ago. That doesn't really apply. So this particular client had this great entrepreneurial culture, had this great system of selection and rewards and measures and recognition and development and recognition and rewards and all that to bring people up that were entrepreneurial. And then they looked at the rules and policies and it said, do not use popcorn in the microwave. You cannot eat at your desk. Like all these things, it was almost like going to a public pool. You ever seen those signs like, no diving, no running, no this, no that, no fun, right? And so that's what the kind of vibe was. So people would come in, they'd be excited. Wow, they went through this rigorous process. Julie's going to talk a little bit about values, but before we jump in, let me just give a little bit of context with Julie's background. She's one of 1,200 people globally that are certified from the Flourishing Institute as a positive psychology practitioner. She has her master's from the School of Medicine at the Ohio State University College of Medicine in preventive medicine. She worked in corporate health promotion and wellness for years with the national headquarters of the American Heart Association, implementing wellness into corporations and the government well before it was hip to do, right? They were doing it then. So,
I thought it was pretty hip.
Yeah, you thought it was. So now it's very key. So anyway, she's going to talk a little bit about values and what it looks like in healthy and unhealthy cultures.
So it was good to see that values wasn't one of the things that you felt least aligned in your companies, which was great. And so what we've just illustrated here are the contrasting healthy values in healthy cultures and unhealthy. And we'd like to really just highlight a couple. I'm going to go through this one since the other two were more important to you guys and we got a little bit shortened on our time. But the first, I think, is most important, really. And it's about viewing employees in a healthful way as humans first. And I think that through this pandemic, we've never, really talked as much as we are now about, seeing people as humans and understanding that everyone is just like me. I don't care if I'm a CEO, if I'm a grocery store clerk, we are all the same. We have different jobs, we have different gifts, but we're all the same. And I think that notion of everyone's just like me is really a mantra that I'd like to put along with that one, because no matter what you do, no matter who you are in a company, everyone's facing similar things. And now we might be facing health challenges, helping kids do school while we're working, two people conference calling in one small one-bedroom apartment at the same time, all sorts of challenges, older people that we can't see in nursing homes because they're sick. So thinking about that in contrast to you an employee are a vehicle to get the work done in a company. And really, I think our country will be better off as we come out of this when we do, and really this perspective of looking at people human first and employee second.
Absolutely.
And
And
you
then,
want to talk a
yeah,
little bit
and
about
just
some other people over that?
Real quick on the second point here is just that healthy cultures nurture both employee and business growth. It's not an either or game. So it's not just like, oh, great cultures are all about their people. Well, those cultures won't be around very long if they're just about their people, right? They've got a business to run also. So there's just balance there. They find that balance. So it's not just drive results, or it's not just we're a great place to work, just have a great time. That's called a party. That's not a business. So there's this balance that they're able to find. And I'll just do the last one real quick just to, and so the third, just about this, the healthy cultures are all about team over me. Our son, when he played football, his coach had these big t-shirts made up, TEAM, all caps, team over a little bitty me at the bottom, right? So the whole point was that the team is bigger than me. And that mentality flows through as a core value of healthy cultures, where it's quite the opposite. It's me over team and unhealthy cultures. So let's just do a quick poll on this one, if you don't mind. And let's see, we'll do, go ahead and take a look at your screen here. And which of these healthy culture values is strongest in your organization? Just give us some feedback real quick on that.
I always feel like we're on a game show while
Yeah,
we're watching this, or one of those little horse races
Yeah.
that are pretend.
Yeah. So this is like election night in November, kind of watching all the latest polls. I'll give you just a couple more seconds on this, folks. Well, they're still moving. We're getting to watch it. All right. On 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, cast those ballots. Here we go. Okay, so it looks like nurturing both employee and business growth is strongest. That's great. That's really a key balance. That's not easy to do. We find a lot of companies struggle on one end or the other of that, for the most part. And then also viewing employees as humans first, which Julie emphasized. So that's great news. And also close behind was personal accountability. That's terrific, because a lot of our clients really struggle with that. They'll say, oh, kids these days, or whatever their concern is, or even executives these days, they just struggle with accountability. So the fact that you're feeling that sense of personal accountability in your organization is a real leg up. I'm
just seeing, like, as a very strong weakness would be the genuine connections. And I think right now it's so hard. I don't even know what feels genuine, because everyone's trying to reach out so much. So I can see that could be very challenging, especially remote when you're used to being in person.
Sure, absolutely. So Julie's going to go ahead and talk a little bit about leadership, which is one of the things you guys mentioned up front.
Yeah. Leadership is we're not just talking about CEO leadership. We're not talking about just the leader of a team. We're talking about individual behaviors as leaders of self, leaders of team, and leaders of the organization. So leadership we view as a very broad and inside out job that starts with you and then goes out. So looking at that and looking at healthy cultures versus unhealthy. Did you want to say something about that?
Well, I just want to, it's very easy. Leadership is always at the top when people say, what's the biggest challenge or something? And I always just say, don't point the finger upward, like point it at ourselves, because we're all leading in some way. We can all create our own healthy culture within our own team, even if we don't have a team, the people that we work with. So think of yourself first as you look at these traits as we're going to walk through.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to go through and start with a couple, we'll get your input on this as well, but strengths and really focusing on strengths versus weaknesses. Really good data shows we can improve weaknesses, but we can never make them a strength. And we can strengthen our strengths almost infinitely. So a healthy culture really looks at what are your strengths. I grew up in a family with real estate. I always say this, first female real estate broker in the state of Ohio, going way back. My grandmother was. And so real estate was all about highest and best use of land. And really that's what we're talking here about individuals. It's great for a company, but it's also great for individuals, building on your strengths. So that would be a very important leadership characteristic of a healthy culture. And the next one being asking questions. We switched it up here, sorry. Yeah. Being willing to be vulnerable. This is hard for everyone. You're used to being very strong and providing this guarded perspective. And now, every person from the top down, we're really looking at just being authentic and being, I hate to use that word because it's so overused, but just being able to say what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah,
on that.
absolutely. And then the last thing is just to embrace diverse perspectives. This to me is like the ultimate diversity is really, am I willing to kind of listen to ideas that might challenge my own thinking, my own assumptions, particularly as I'm a leader. I might think I've got all the answers, which of course we always say the higher you go, kind of the more questions you need to be asking versus the more answers you need to be giving, versus unhealthy cultures that kind of have this fear of dissenting opinions. Well, we're already down that path. We've tried that before. He thinks differently. That creates real concern there for unhealthy cultures. So
before we go through the last section of communications, just to pop in, share some things we learned popping in. Really interesting dialogue. Just we kind of literally came in for about 4 or 5 seconds it seemed, but dialogue about trust and how important that is. And with a high trust environment, how many more things people feel comfortable doing when you don't feel like you're getting scolded or called out. Really important. Top-down modeling. Walking the talk, how important it is for the top leaders. And I think top is interesting because top is in the eyes of the beholder. I mean, obviously the CEO and president are at the top, but a team leader can be the top of a totem pole too. So walking the talk at all levels.
And then we heard a lot about listening, right? We always talk about leadership. I always tell people the higher you go, the more you need to listen. The top leaders that we work with have to listen at least 50% of the time. So listening to seek to understand. And if you're going to ask a question, make sure you're listening. If you don't listen after you ask, you just create cynicism with your team. So listening first was key. And then the other thing we heard just about watching kind of we call it your say-do ratio. Mm-hmm. What percentage of the things that you say to your team do you actually do? And that ought to be close to a 1-to-1 ratio. So you can manage that in 2 different ways. One is to make sure you do everything you say, but that's hard. The first part, the easier part, is to make sure you manage what you say. So like, am I overcommitting? Even it could be as simple as, oh, let's get together after lunch. Well, do you know that you could get together after lunch, right? Don't just say that and have an employee waiting going, oh, my boss said we can get together after lunch, and then your schedule doesn't allow that. So being discerning about the things that you say. We always say the best leaders view their words as promises, not just words. They're just not words. They're promises to those other people. So anyway, that's one of the other things that we heard. Anything else, Julie?
Well, just tying into that, let's just talk about communications, because that was one of the key areas as we finish up the last few minutes to talk about. And I think we heard this when we popped in as well, in healthy cultures, open communication. And I apologize, I don't remember which individual and company this was, but a large public company I thought was interesting in terms of a communication, did the ultimate open communication by making a statement that we will share everything with our employees, everything. And so I thought that was a really interesting and a very complete example of open communication. Yeah. You're not going to find out anything in the newspaper that we didn't tell you before. As long as that's legal, everything is going to be communicated openly. And we talk about some things that happen when we don't have open communication. As human beings, we are geared towards negative thinking. It was protective in our past. So without information, our brain starts to swirl and go to the worst case scenario. So that open communication helps us do that in a really important way. And
I'm going to jump down to this third one here, talk about informal organic networks for ideation. I worked at a large airline early in my career, and we had a 120-person department called the Ideas and Action Department. You submitted your idea, and you hope that you got that great idea like the guy did years ago who said, let's take the olives off the salads. And we saved $300,000 back in the day. It was a big deal. So thereafter, everyone who submitted an idea thought, mine's not the $300 idea. So my point in sharing that is that oftentimes we want to reward communication and ideation with our teams. But what happens is rewarding that oftentimes has an unintended consequence of starting to kind of inhibit people. So my suggestion to you, and there's plenty of research from one of my alma maters, George Washington, around this, it says informal social networks are more powerful in creating great ideas and collaboration in organizations than formal structured networks. So oftentimes companies say, well, we're going to put this new system in where we could track all our cool ideas. A system's not the answer, trust me, right? So having a place that feels psychologically safe for people to say, hey, you could throw out a crazy idea and that's great. We'll just piggyback on it. We'll do something. And you know what? You don't need to submit it through some program. You and your boss talk about it and go. Toyota, I think, gets like 3 million ideas a year from their employees. Every employee has to submit a couple ideas a month. But what's most interesting about that is that 80% of those ideas are implemented. 80%. So that tells us is that they're really small ideas. They're not trying to swing for the fences and get grand slams. They're just like little singles day in and day out are going to improve us 1% a day. And the other thing tells me is that there's no system that's getting in the way. It's like, you got a good idea? Go talk to your boss, Julie. Say, yep, that's a good idea. Go do it.
I think today's day, I mean, we've heard so many stories about functional efficiencies that have been gained in COVID. There was no time to put a system in place.
That's right.
People were just trying to figure it out. And amazingly, in a very short period of time, some fantastic ideas for improvement have come about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's kind of an illustration of doesn't require a formal system.
Absolutely. So anyway, those are just a few things you could see on the left and the right-hand side. So give me a quick, just like kind of a thumbs up if you feel like you have healthy communications in your organization. Well, I'm guessing not, because most people said they didn't, right? So I'll stop sharing now here.
Let me see. We got some. There we
okay,
go.
cool.
We're all together again.
Good. That's great. Excellent. Well, we're getting close to our time. We're actually at our time. We always want to be respectful of our time. We thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I apologize for the glitch. We want to thank our good friend, David Reed, with the Customer Centered Consulting Group.
For me.
David Reed, thanks again so much. We appreciate you and all your work and your partnership over the years. And I wanted to thank you guys for being here. Again, we help leaders achieve healthy employee and business growth. That's underlined and. It's an and both world, not an either or world. So if we could help you, we'd happy to just spend some time, gift our time with you to chat about how you could do that in your organization. Other than that, within 48 hours, as Julie mentioned, you'll get the recording. We'll have to edit it a little bit. Sorry for all the bumpiness there. And the slides and some tips to some other tools that we have to help you out. So again, we appreciate your time. Take good care. God bless, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn, Julie.
Thank you.